Hello, everyone, and welcome back to WABAN, the movie and TV show podcast where an expert on the subject discusses things with the average viewer. I am your host, Nim, and today I am joined by Kaiser Soze.
Why'd you pick the character that we don't... Well, I mean, I guess we do meet him, but we don't actually, see his persona as Kaiser Soze.
I don't know, because he's the most interesting part of the movie, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, true, but...
I was just thinking because you could be like, ooh, am I real? Am I just a legend? Ooh, I don't know.
But, we've never seen him talk as Kaiser Soze or how he acts or anything.
Just his name strikes fear in everybody.
Or the story of how he shot and killed his family and then... went on a killing spree.
I wonder, if that's true. Before we start, by the way, I'm just going to say, I know I don't say this every time we do movie discussions, but I'm just going to say right now, spoiler warning for The Usual Suspects, because this is definitely very much a movie that you do not want spoiled before watching it.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. So I'm just going to say that right off the bat. So if you haven't seen The Usual Suspects, then, yeah. Spoiler warning, it came out in 1995. It's a pretty good movie, so check it out. But yeah, so yeah, it's I always wondered that, after watching the movie, I was like, is that story true?
Right? So you learn the little twist at the end, and it's like, okay, so what part of any of his stories were lies?
Well, yeah, so this whole time you're following these 5 characters and what they're up to, and it's through the eyes of what's his name, Verbal, I think.
Verbal, yeah.
Yeah. But at the end of the movie, it's very clear that he made a bunch of stuff up and he was lying most of the time. So it's is the entirety of what we've been watching a lie? All just which parts of it are true, which parts of it are not?
Now, we know that, the general basis of it is true, right? Because it lines up with all the information that the police have. But anything beyond that point could be absolutely asinine.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of it's just kind of unknown. And, the whole thing where he just kind of barely gets away with it, which... one thing I will say is the detective that's interrogating him, he's pretty good, in the sense that at the end, the fact that he's able to pick up on the fact that he made up all this stuff based on looking around at the writings of everything,
finding all the names that he used.
Yeah, that's actually a pretty smart. The fact that he was able to put it together based on that is pretty good. That was a pretty awesome moment when he just starts looking at everything and he drops his mug and the bottom of his mug has the one thing on it.
Kobayashi.
So he's literally making up stories and making up names based on random things he sees pinned up on the wall and stuff. Yeah. But
and the only reason the
detective very interesting.
Is because the chief was just
yeah.
It's yeah, you should see my garage. It's also a terrible mess. And it's yeah, look at all this junk. What is... Oh, fuck.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's... one thing I was wondering too is so early on in the movie, at one point, I kind of guessed that the twist. Not gonna lie,
I did know. Too. As soon as I heard of Kaiser Soze and how nobody knows who he is, I'm just it's the cripple, isn't it? It's the perfect disguise.
Well, yeah. See, so I feel the thing though is I was definitely looking for some big twist because I've heard of this movie. I know it's well known, and I know it's one of those movies that's has some sort of twist. So I was definitely looking for it. If I had watched this movie like, let's say back in 1995, and I just saw it as like, oh, it's just some crime drama. They're trying to solve a crime. And that's like, I didn't know anything else about it. I might not have figured it out because I wouldn't be looking for a twist, kind of. But I think, yeah. But, you know,
I don't know. I saw it like building up to a reveal, I think. And I was just like, okay, it's one of these characters. And then some of the characters started dying. And so like, okay, it's one of these two characters. And we was like, it's this character. Oh, so it's the other character. Got it.
Well, yeah, because it's like the detective is like, this is who it is. It's what's his name? Dean Keaton. It's Dean Keaton, which like that's a pretty logical thing to come to as well, based on the movie, like as an audience member. So when it actually got to that, I was like, oh, I guess I was wrong. Okay, because I thought that they were actually. I was like, for a second, I was like, oh, is it actually? And then I was like, wait. And then as it went on, but because Verbal does a really good job at sort of just playing the innocent victim kind of character. Like, he was just along for the ride. You know, he was such good friends with Keaton. He can't be terrible. Oh no, like I'm just a cripple, and he's like practically crying, like he was my friend, and like
everything about him is made to be like the vulnerable character, like, you know, being not as bright, being crippled, convincing them not to kill anybody in their first little thing. His reaction when he shot the guy with that they were like doing a job to get his money from.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the kind of the general point, right? Like that's where I kind of figured, I was like, there's going to be something interesting about this character. Like I was like, he just seems like he's like, it almost, I almost was like, you know, this is probably like just put on as a front so that people don't like suspect him of anything. So like, oh, he's just the cripple. He's not the usual suspect. You know, the other characters, they would be a usual suspects. They're the people you assume are like the, you know, would be do terrible things. But he's not the usual suspect, you know. I think that's partly where the title comes from. Also, the fact of like the beginning of the movie was them meeting in the police lineup, because they've all been in many police lineups because they're like the usual suspects, you know. Right. They're usually it, you know. I think that's kind of the idea. So, but yeah, no, it's a good kind of interesting way of doing it, so that you kind of underestimate the character, and it's like that's like the genius of Kaiser Soze. His whole like nobody would ever suspect him of being, you know, and he kind of implies that like after this he's gonna like disappear, because it's like you think you have him, but then he disappears, and it's like, you know, but.
My thought was, like he did all that just to get that one loose end, right? The one guy that he shot on the ship.
Yes.
But now, in doing that, he just left another loose end as that detective figures it out.
Right. So they'll make a sequel about him trying to kill the detective to tie up that loose end. That's
Yeah, but it wouldn't work as well, because now you already know the twist.
Well, no, obviously. It would be so stupid to make a sequel.
Yeah.
Also, the main actor isn't allowed to do acting anymore. You know, there's a whole thing with that, so, you know. Well, he's not going to be hired by anyone anymore, so, you know. I don't know if you know anything about Kevin Spacey.
I know the name. That's it.
Yeah. I mean, so he's been a pretty prominent actor since I think the 90s is when he was first really big. Maybe the 80s. I don't really know. He's always been, you know, known for being a really good actor. I mean, his acting is good in this movie. But, you know, in the year, I believe 2017, I could be wrong. You know, the whole Me Too thing was going on, right? So yeah, he was one of the biggest ones in that. Something about him molesting like little boys that he worked with on movies in the past or something. It's bad. So I didn't actually realize before we clicked into this movie that he was in this movie, and then I was like, oh, Kevin Spacey's in this movie, and I was like, oh. It's like, that's going to feel weird watching it knowing that. And I was like, well, I'll try to put it. And then, but I think his acting was good enough that I didn't really see Kevin. I mean, the movie is still good, but it's like, I'm just like, oh. So
Leave the bad taste in your mouth kind of thing.
Yeah. Because it's like, this was obviously years before anyone like knew about that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, because I think it's like when some of those boys were like adults, like they grew up, they like came out and like told everyone about it. So I don't know if he was able to get like criminally charged or went to jail, or if he just like lost his like career basically. Because I mean, you know, he's not going to be hired for anything anymore. He was in the show House of Cards, which was a really popular show. And then he got fired from that and was replaced by a different actor. And people didn't like the show as much because, like, you know, his acting and his character was part of what made the show what it was. But it's like, at the same time, it's like, you can't be like, oh, they should have kept him because, well, it's like, yeah. So it's just a difficult situation.
Yeah.
I think it just goes to show, like, you know, somebody can be really good at something, really good at art, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're a good person, you know? Very clear. Very clearly, you know? Yeah, it's very horrible, actually. So, but I figured, I always feel like when I watch a movie with somebody like that in it, I feel like I have to like bring that up as like I don't know why. I just feel like that's an important thing to bring up. Like, I'm not condoning this person. I don't know. It's like a weird, like, you almost feel like you have to, like, I don't know. It's like, it's weird.
I kind of get it, yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, they make a sequel, they have to recast. Not that they would make a sequel, because that wouldn't make any sense, but...
Yeah, it'd be like making a sequel of Fight Club, like, why? We already know
you can't. The twist is done. He already got rid of his in Fight Club. He like got rid of his extra personality by like, oh, spoiler alert for a Fight Club, by shooting himself in the brain, or whatever.
I never got that part. Like,
I still
it goes like through his jaw or something.
Yeah.
Just
well,
like,
I thought I was.
Are you just okay right now?
I remember being like, oh, so he's killing himself to get rid of the. Okay, that makes sense. That made sense as an ending. And then he just gets up and starts talking, and I'm like, and he's hanging out with Marla, and I'm like, oh. You're not going to like go get immediate medical attention or something. Like you clearly need it. But no, that is a really good movie though. That part is a little weird, but it is a very good movie.
Yeah.
But anyways, so yeah, but one thing though, when watching a movie like this that I always like to take into account, like, you know, you're like, oh, this actor is terrible. It's hard to like, you want to praise his acting because his acting is good, but you also don't because you don't want to like give somebody like that any credit.
Right.
But at the same time, it's nice that with like a movie like this, you can also kind of be like, you know what? A movie isn't just one person. A movie is like many people working together to create it. Like there was script writers, there was other actors, there was director, cinematographer, all these other people that might not be terrible people. So, you know, look at it from the point their hard work deserves to be praised. So let's praise the script. You know, like the script writer was probably, maybe, hopefully a good person. I don't really know, but it's like, yeah, it's just hard to.
Yeah, don't let them spoil the work of everybody else.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's kind of like how I watch like the Harry Potter movies. You know what I mean? It's like J.K. Rowling. I mean, J.K. Rowling's not as horrible as like Kevin Spacey. She's just kind of like transphobic. I mean, that's basically it. but like, you know, a lot of people have said that, like, watching the Harry Potter movies, like, they don't really see them as like J.K. Rowling's creation, because it's like all like filmmakers and other actors and all these other creative people creating it based on her story that she wrote, but like, so they can kind of separate it. But yeah, so it's kind of like that general type of thing. But back to the movie. Yeah, I think it was interesting. I feel like starting at the beginning of the movie, I wasn't as into the movie at the beginning. I was trying to figure out like what the movie was doing. I think at the first I was like, what's this about? Because it opened with the scene of the thing blowing up and Keaton getting shot, and like, you don't know who shot him. It doesn't show who it is, right? So I figured, like, okay, the mystery is going to be like, who did it? Who's that guy? That was going to be the mystery. But then it kind of goes to like when they met in the police lineup, which I don't know, like it jumped around in like timeline wise. So like,
right.
I thought that scene was following that scene at first when I was watching it. I was like, oh, so this is like them trying to investigate who did the boat thing, but it wasn't. And then they started mentioning something about like hijacking a truck or whatever, and I was like, oh wait, no, it's not. Wait, what? And then I started to realize, oh wait, this is just him explaining how they met. Okay, and then he's gonna explain the rest of the story of like that leads up to.
Yeah, it does like the classic thing of, let's show like the very end of the movie stuff where it's this dramatic moment and then cut back to how we get there.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting because that first scene when the boat is like blowing up and stuff, the camera keeps cutting to and focusing on like this pile of like stuff. And like you could see like the light of the explosion there, but you couldn't see it. I was like, that seems weird to focus on that. Like you could tell there's an explosion, because I was like, I wonder why they're doing that. But then later in the movie, when they're getting to the scene where he's talking about how he witnessed Keaton get shot or whatever, he was hiding behind that pile of stuff. And I was like, oh, that's why the camera focused specifically on that. Okay, in the beginning.
He wasn't actually.
Except he wasn't actually there. Keaton. He was doing the killing, the shooting. Yeah. Well, throughout the movie, there was like a long while where they kept showing the sketch artist talking to that one guy, and I'm like, okay, there's going to be a big reveal at the end when the sketch finally is done that it looks like verbal. I'm like, yep, that's going to be it.
Yep.
It's going to be a big reveal. Oh, that's who it is. Yeah.
Yeah, come to think of it, he left the loose end of the detective, and because the one guy survived long enough to give that sketch description.
Well, right, because it's like he can leave, change his name and whatever, but he still looks the same, like the same person. So it's kind of like maybe it was doing that slightly on purpose, like leaving it open ended, like, oh, they're that much closer to catching this person, so maybe they'll be able to catch him like in the future, kind of, potentially. But I think one of the most interesting things about like the character, though, like the main kind of, I guess the main character, Verbal would be the main character, is how is this the full-on kind of sociopathic-ness that he has, which is sort of this, because I mean the basic idea of like sociopathy, whatever you call it, being a sociopath is like the idea of like you don't have like normal human emotions or like attachment, right? But you can yeah, exactly. But you can fake it. Like a lot of people who are like sociopathic can like, if they train themselves well enough, can actually like fake emotion and fake attachment.
Sociopath, or is that psychopath?
I'm pretty sure it's sociopath. I could be wrong. If I am, then well, I'm not an expert. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a sociologist, psychologist. But either way, that's kind of what it is. Which obviously, because it's like at the beginning, he tells the story about him murdering his family, which may or may not be true, but still, it fits with the character, right? As far as we know, because we know, like, he became really good friends with Dean Keaton, but he killed him anyways. He didn't care. Like, it's like I have heard stories of like people who are like, there was like one story. It was like somebody who was sociopathic. Not to say not everybody who's sociopathic is like horrible and evil. It just means like, you can't feel the emotion. There's a lot of people, I don't want to like paint that picture.
This is a very extreme version of it.
Right, yeah. But I've heard stories of like, I don't remember where this was. It might have been a fictional story, but it was something about like somebody was growing up and they were like sociopathic and they started to realize it as they were growing up, and to test to see how like sociopathic they were, they killed their own dog as like a teenager, like a kid or something, like their dog that they had since they were like a baby, that they'd had an attachment to see like what if they would feel any emotion from it, and they didn't, and they're like, oh, guess I'm sociopathic. I'm pretty sure that was a fictional story that was like in something. It might have been in a book I read once.
Yeah, that's darn.
And whenever I think of like sociopathy, like that's what I think of. I'm like, but I'm not saying everyone who's sociopathic is like that. That's an extreme kind of case. But that is what this character is, right? Obviously, because he forms all these relationships, attachments, and stuff, and clearly doesn't care. Clearly has no empathy for it. He killed the guys. So Dean Keaton had his like, was it his wife? Or fiance
or something like that. Yeah,
I can't remember his significant other. I think they might have mentioned that they were married at one point, but I don't remember specifically. He keeps talking about how like, oh, they were truly in love and everything, and it was so sad. But then like clearly at the end they find out that they found her like murdered or whatever, and it's like, okay, clearly he's the one who had her murdered. Either did it himself or had somebody do it. So like that really, again shows the sociopathy, and also the fact that he just kind of kills his friends with no remorse.
I think it also really helps with his ability to lie, because he was, he just acted out pure emotion in that moment as if it was nothing.
Well, yeah, I think that's another big thing with like sociopathy is it people who have it are better at lying a lot of times, because they kind of, it's easier for them to mimic emotion instead of like, I don't know, it's something weird like that. It's interesting, but yeah, that's definitely what the character is. Obviously with the whole like killed his family thing, like we're gonna kill your family. No, you're not. I'm gonna do it. Haha. Before you can. Yeah.
Okay. The way the movie phrased it was, I'd rather them be dead than live after having this happen to them, right? The way you phrased it was, you can't kill my family if I kill them first.
I mean, that's how I remember it, so.
I mean, I suppose it's a valid point, but it is still stupid.
I love how in that scene, Kaiser Soze is seen as this like big, strong, kind of like, he's got this long flowing hair, and he's like, just seems like a total badass. But it turns out it's just this little guy.
Yeah, that whole reveal scene is really good, honestly, because he's looking at all the things around the room, finding all the names that he used, putting it together. He slow motion drops his coffee mug, and you watch it shatter on the ground. All the while, you're watching his footsteps go across the sidewalk. and he's limping, and he's limping, and he's limping, and then he's suddenly walking and striding, and then he just gets in the car with his assistant, and they just drive off.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy stuff. Although, you know what's interesting though? So we know he made up the name Kobayashi, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is that guy's real name? Because like he's a real guy. He didn't just make him up, because at the end of the movie, he leaves in a car driven by that guy.
Right.
So what's his real... I mean, I guess Kobayashi was just a fake name he used.
But yeah, just so that he couldn't
But like, that's what I'm wondering,
name.
because like Kobayashi isn't the name that he... Like when he met with the 5 people, Kobayashi is definitely not the name that he actually gave them in real life, right? Because clearly we know that he made that name up on the spot by looking at the coffee mug.
Right.
So what name did he actually give them? Which, I mean, if he did, that would have probably been a fake name as well, I would guess. But
I mean, that'd be smart, yeah. I mean, I suppose it doesn't really matter, since he just made the name up just so that they wouldn't be able to track it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just think that's interesting, because it's like he definitely could have used whatever name he had already used, that guy had already used, but decided, no, I'm going to use a word that's on the bottom of your coffee mug for his name. But yeah, no, it's a really good movie. I don't know. Do you have much more to say about it? Like, see that I feel like you know what? I guess I could talk about like the iconic scene. So I guess one of the most iconic scenes of this movie is like the early on scene where they're all in the police lineup when they meet for the first time.
Oh yeah.
Apparently this movie they came up with the title and the poster before they came up with the script. It was like they came up with like, I think it was like maybe the director or something came up with like, it was like The Unusual Suspects, and came up with the idea of like all these people meeting in a police lineup, and that was kind of the basis of the story, and then everything else was kind of went based on that.
Honestly, you putting it like that just makes it sound like a D&D campaign to me. Just a police lineup instead of a tavern.
Yeah, everybody meets at a police lineup, and then it goes from there.
Honestly, I should do that. That's a great idea.
Yeah. No, I did like the part where they had to repeat the line. It's like, repeat the line. Give me the keys, you motherfucking cocksucker. Each person like adding their own spin on it. It was funny. And then the one guy apparently they did a lot of improv in that scene. Actually. So, which I feel like makes sense. It definitely felt like they were a little bit like just kind of going with it, you know?
Well, that does make sense, because it's an introductory scene to all the characters, and it's all the same line even, so you want as much diversity as possible through each iteration that they give.
Yeah, exactly. So like if you do it improv, everybody can just kind of go based on like just kind of feel the line out as the character that they are. Be like, how would my character do this? Like the one guy literally just goes like pulls just like pretends he has a gun in his hand. He's like, give me the key, you motherfucker. Like he couldn't have just done it simply. He decided to act it out. The one guy says it barely able to like in English. Like, like fucking cocksucker, what the fuck? You know. Yeah, so it was a good scene though. Good scene. I think all the actors generally were very good. Benicio del Toro, his accent that he did was a little interesting.
Is that the one that was hard to understand for everybody?
Yeah. Because it's like not his like normal accent. Because it's like, I think apparently he when he read the script, he realized that his character kind of mostly just existed to get killed off at one, like, because he was the first one to die. He was the one that they like buried on the beach,
Right.
or and so he decided to make his character more stand out more and be more distinct. He would give him an accent, like a weird accent, or like make him hard to understand or something, to make you remember him more memorable. So that's kind of funny.
There was even the interrogation scene where they're asking him questions and he answers and he's like, "What did you say?" He's just like, "Can you hear me in the back? Can you hear me in the back?"
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. It's it's good. I do like how this movie kind of deals with like a bit of like sort of like law enforcement corruption, kind of. Because like, you know, it's not like, oh, the police are always doing the right thing, you know. Like when they do these police lineups, they don't really care that much about getting the right guy. It's more just kind of like we'll just pick out these usual suspects and pin it on one of them, whatever, like just so we can pin it on somebody. Or like, or there was obviously the whole like the
taxi service,
thing that they were like trying to break up,
getting paid off to get those 5 people in that police lineup specifically.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's it's interesting because it's like, I don't know. I just think that's always interesting when you kind of add that. It makes things not so black and white. It's not there's good people and there's bad people. It's like, no, everybody's just people who are a little bit of gray.
Add except some intrigue, realism.
Except for Verbal / Kaiser Soze, he's pretty much just evil. Does not give a shit about anyone. But yeah, I do like when there's like stuff like that.
Right. I just remembered this scene where Kobayashi is like going through each of them on how they stole from Kaiser Soze.
Yeah.
And it just reveals that the one guy was the actual guy that did the crime that they were in the police lineup for, and they all just look at him and he just shrugs. It's like,
oh yeah,
okay.
It's like, yeah, that was me. Whoops. Yeah, but that is good. Yeah, that was interesting because he's just kind of like, it's okay. Kaiser Soze doesn't actually hold any grudge against you because he knows that you didn't know that you were stealing from him, but. Since you did steal from me, he has a favor, so I guess he'll take take you up on this. Yeah, it was interesting, and then like the scene where they were finally on the boat. They were looking for the cocaine. There was no cocaine. It was just the one guy that they were trying to kill, that he wanted to kill. That was when my brain started to be like, wait, maybe Verbal isn't Kaiser Soze, because for a while I was like, that's probably going to be the twist. And then I was like, maybe it's not, because like throughout this scene, it's showing him off on the sidelines just watching everything as like show somebody get killed, and he's off on the side. I was like, what? But then I don't know why I wasn't thinking, oh, it's obviously probably like this is just the story he was telling, and that, you know, this isn't how it really happened.
Right.
But it like threw me off for some reason, even though, like, you know,
like I definitely had it firm in my mind that it was Verbal early on. But definitely like watching the events play out with Verbal just like on the sidelines, not really doing anything, did mess with me a little bit and messed with that like perception that I already had.
Yeah, but on one hand, there's that, but also like in a way that could also make you think that it is him even more in a way, because it's like, oh, he's just on the sidelines watching things happen. Like, it seems weird that he's not doing anything, during this. Like, he was just kind of there. Like, he's just an observer, which makes sense because he's the one telling the story of what happened. So it's like, when he's making up the story, he's like, where was I? And during this, I'll tell them I was just hanging out on the sidelines. Cool. I wasn't doing anything, like.
Yeah, just him not doing anything is suspicious because, like, why is he there then?
Yeah. It was interesting, though, that they sort of did this thing where, like, when somebody was killed by Kaiser Soze, it was like this big dramatic moment and you wouldn't see who killed them. Like, the one guy, when he was killed, it was like this big dramatic moment. There was like a light and he like looks around, he gets shot and he's like, has this big shocked look on his face, and it's like this bright light comes in. It's almost like he was killed by God. Except, well, I guess the devil in this case, because Kaiser Soze is also known as the devil. Yeah, it's interesting, but that was, yeah. But yeah, no, the movie did convince me for a split second that it was Dean Keaton, and then I was like, wait, no.
As soon as he said it was Dean Keaton, I was just like, red herring.
It can't be.
Like, there's,
it's like, because the thing that seemed weird about it being Dean Keaton too is like, it would be weird if it was, because then it's like, oh, that was just kind of what the investigator thought the whole time. It would be it wouldn't feel as much of a twist if it's like, you just kind of reaffirmed what I already kind of believed, and that was it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not as like strong of an ending, I guess, if they just kind of did that.
Right. And that's like a main point in the movie, right? Like, Verbal says it early on that the cops aren't looking for the truth, they're looking to be right. They're looking to reaffirm what they already know, and so when, like, they'll look for evidence until they find something that does reaffirm what they think they know.
Yeah,
and he uses that against them to make him believe that it's Dean instead of him.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like he'll add a little bit of like evidence in his lies that he's telling to make it seem more like it's Dean. But it's like he uses the fact that like he knows like the officers he already kind of believes that it's probably Dean, so it's like just gonna push you in that direction a little more,
right?
Because you're already kind of there instead of like,
not gonna redirect you in any way. I'm just gonna guide you straight to the path that you're already on, because that's just easy at this point.
It's like I'm gonna stroke your ego a little bit and making you be like, I'm right, haha, I was right the whole time. So yeah, it's like it's easier to reaffirm something that somebody already believes than to convince them that they were wrong, kind of,
right?
So that's really, really interesting, and it just shows his master manipulation skills.
Yep.
Like, he's just so really, really made for a really strong ending.
I just thinking about it, there's so many times where he like revealed a technique that he was using against the detective as he was using it. So, like, you're just looking for something that reaffirms what you think you know. There was the greatest lie the devil ever told was convincing the world that he's not real.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the... Yeah. Well, right, because it's like, I mean, that's the whole trick behind the whole Kaiser Soze thing is like, making him a legend, it makes him seem like he's untouchable and impossible to catch. Like, is he real? Is he not? Is he, you know, at the end of the day, technically speaking, is Verbal really Kaiser Soze in a way? Or is he just using, did that legend already exist, and is he just kind of using that legend that already exists and becoming that, you know? Was he the original Kaiser Soze? Who knows?
Honestly, it's probably a lot like Bruce Wayne and Batman. Like he probably considers himself Kaiser Soze, but Kaiser Soze is more like just the overarching idea of this like force.
But yeah, exactly. Well, or maybe like this is one thing I was thinking too, is like maybe maybe he's was never Kaiser Soze, and there was a real Kaiser Soze who looks more like the one in that like little story he told.
Oh,
who was
like
the real one? But then like maybe he really did, the real one did die at some point and became kind of this legend, and he just kind of took it up. He's like, he heard the legend and he was like, huh,
like
maybe
Princess
I'll become
Bride, Dread Pirate Rogers kind of thing.
Yeah, something like that. It's Roberts, by the way, not Rogers. But yeah, no, something like that. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is like but not in the sense that it's passed on. Like he's like, I am dying, I will pass the mantle of Kaiser Soze onto you. Not necessarily in that way, but in more of like he hears the legends. The legends still exist after Kaiser Soze dies, or where, you know, maybe he didn't die, maybe he just retired off somewhere and nobody knows where he went. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to become Kaiser Soze. I'm going to use those legends to my advantage and essentially become Kaiser Soze. Like maybe that's what it is. Who knows? Could be. It's just interesting to like think about like the possibilities, I guess. Those questions will all be answered in the sequel titled The Unusual Suspects. Yeah, that's see what I did there.
You're so adamant about there being a sequel to a movie that it's really impossible to make a sequel for, because you already know everything. Well, not really, but kind of. Yeah,
and as I said, the main actor is not going to get any more work.
True.
It's not going to be hired by anyone. So they'd have to recast it. Darn. No. Obviously, yeah, that would be ridiculous to make a sequel. Again, like it'd be like making a sequel to Fight Club. Be like Fight Clubs would be the sequel. Or they do like a remake, but call it The Fight Club. You know how they do where they add like the to the title? Like
I hate that so much.
Like the Batman. The Batman is a good movie, but yeah, the whole title thing is like weird. Or like they remade Suicide Squad and called it The Suicide Squad. You know that whole thing. So it'll be. This movie's already titled The Unusual Suspects, though.
So maybe just Usual
They'll do
Suspects?
the opposite. Yeah. They'll do the opposite. They'll remake it and call it Usual Suspects. Yeah, that's what they'll do. Oh, that'd be so ridiculous. Like, why would you do that? But yeah, so that's that. I don't know if I have much more to say about it, unless you do.
No, I'm all good. We were talking about sequels, and it's like, what is there a possibility for a sequel to Fight Club? Like, what if there's like the actual Fight Club idea, and you're constantly waiting for somebody to be this like insane psychopath with multiple personalities, and it just never happens?
Right. It just turns out the entire story is just about a fight club, like legitimately. Because like, no, this is what it would be. It'd be like the sequel would not have like Tyler Durden in it at all, or I guess whoever Edward Norton's character's real name is. I never says, the narrator. Right. He's not in it at all. It's all about like, it's like ever since that happened, the Fight Club continued. Like that he started, and then it started inspiring a bunch of other fight clubs, and it became this like nationwide thing. There's just all these underground fight clubs, and that's what the movie's about. It's just the fight clubs continuing, and some character being in the fight clubs, and it's about him fighting in the fight club, and that's it. That's the movie.
You're constantly waiting for them to like do some like overarching plot, or for somebody to fall asleep but still be walking around being controlled by another personality, and it just never happens.
Yeah, you're waiting for some big twist, something, and then it's just a fight club, you know? Mm-hmm. Which is like, it's funny because it's like a lot of people probably thought that's what the movie was when they like first watched it. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, but this sequel is going to be actually what people thought the original was going to be. But people aren't going to think that because they know what the first one is like, because it's a sequel. So they're going to assume that it's like that, but it's going to be like the opposite. That's genius.
It's terrible.
That is terrible. No, there's certain movies you just cannot make sequels to.
Oh, yeah.
Fight Club is one of them. The Usual Suspects is one of them. There are movies that just you don't do sequels. You know, like Star Wars. That's a movie that pretty much demands sequels. You know, the original Star Wars, easily make a franchise out of. But like, not something like Fight Club or The Usual Suspects. Or I mean, I'm sure there's other examples like that, but.
There's probably examples that they actually did make sequels of.
There definitely is movies that should not have sequels that have sequels. Yeah, for sure. I can't think of an example right now, but it's definitely out there. All right. So I guess that's probably about all. I don't really have much more to say about it unless you do.
I'm all good.
All right. So, anyways, thank you all for listening to this week's episode of WABAN. Next week we are going to be continuing our discussion on Justice League Unlimited. It took me a second to think. I was like, what show are we talking about? Justice League Unlimited. We're going to talk about season 2 of Justice League Unlimited, so definitely tune in for that. That'll be next week, Saturday at noon Eastern Standard Time. That's when you can expect every new episode of WABAN, every noon Eastern Standard Time on Saturdays. There you go. That was a weird way of saying it. And you can listen to the podcast in many different platforms, including our YouTube channel, which is titled WABAN. There's a link in the description to that channel. You can find every episode of the podcast there, but you can also find some gaming videos we did of Portal and Portal 2. So if you want to check that out, they were a lot of fun to make. So yeah, definitely check that out. And subscribe so you can be ready for more. Also, you can listen to the podcast on a bunch of audio platforms, including Anchor, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. Just not any audio platform you can think of, but a lot of them. So there you go. Anyways, that's... yes, you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, Nim TV. Might as well support that. I almost didn't mention it. There's a link in the description to that as well. I do a bunch of movie, TV show type content. Some, specifically shorter stuff, more specific content instead of just like having a discussion about a movie like this podcast. So yeah, definitely check that out. Anyways, thank you all for listening to this week's episode of WABAN. I've been Nim.
And I'm Cub.
Goodbye, everyone.